both the morning equally late. It leaves no step had trodden black, and I kept the first for another day, knowing how way leads on to way. I doubted if I should ever come back.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this webinar of the Daylight Academy. My name is Burkhard König, and I'm a member of the Daylight Academy, and I'm very happy to welcome you all to this new edition of another session here. This session here, this webinar, is part of the Daylight Awareness Week, and maybe some of you have participated in other events that were taking place this week. The Danish Daylight Awareness Week this year has the title Daylight and Us, Learning from the Past. And you will see that this specific webinar we have here today fits very well in this overall topic. The topic of today's session is solar energy, the test of time and politics. And you will see in the later part here of the webinar what all we can learn from the past, why it's very useful to look back. So welcome and great that you join us here today. I particularly also welcome our speakers. We have with us today an artist duo from Switzerland, Christina Hemauer and Roman Keller. They are both from Switzerland, and they have interest in showing us the relation of energy and society in an artistic content, and they have done this for quite a number of time. I hope some of you were able to also watch the movie they made, A Road Not Taken, and in the introduction here in the registration for the webinar, you can have the access. If you have not watched the movie now, please do so. We will talk about this a little later and come to this in a few seconds on there. So Christina Hemauer studied art in Zurich, and Roman Keller environmental sciences, also in Zurich, and photography. You see, it's an interesting mix of the two from the backgrounds on there. Then we also have with us Professor Jean-Louis Scartezzini, and he has a very different background on there. He is more background on physics and has kind of worked at EPFL for many, many years, and he characterizes himself as a solar freak. To start our discussion, I would like to ask here Christina and Roman to just join us here. Yeah, there you are. Perfect. I can see you. Perfect, right? And you made this film that hopefully many of you have also watched, the film A Road Not Taken. And I would like to kind of start our discussion with give you the chance to tell us a little bit about your motivation and the context. So what brought you to this, to make this film? And maybe you can share a few thoughts about this. And we also have a few kind of visual impressions from the film that are shown while you tell us about this. Please go ahead.
Thanks a lot for the introduction, Burkhard. So, well, yes, our movie A Road Not Taken tells the story of the short life of the first solar installation on the White House that was put up in 1979. Please, slide 2. By the US President Jimmy Carter, and was taken down during the Reagan presidency in 1986.
Well, the backbone of the documentary essay is a journey with two of the former White House solar panels, with a, please, next slide, grease-powered pickup truck from a tiny college in Unity, Maine to Washington, and further south to the Jimmy Carter Library and Museum in Atlanta, Georgia. We were able to interview very interesting people, above all, President Carter himself. Please, next slide.
So in 1979, Carter mentioned in his dedication speech on the roof of the White House, a generation from now, this solar heater can either be a curiosity, a museum piece, an example of a road not taken, or it can be just a small part of one of the greatest, most exciting adventures ever undertaken by the American people. Slide number 5, please.
Well, the movie has a prehistory, and now we come to the motivation. We found out about the solar installation during our research we did for our post-petrol manifesto in 2006. On the website of the Unity College, some of the panels were put up for auction, but when we contacted the college, they said they're not for sale anymore. But then we agreed to transport 2 of them to the Museum of American History and to the Carter Museum. Please, next slide.
So after the road trip, we had a solar exhibition in Fribourg and invited Jimmy Carter for the opening. Instead of coming, he sent us an invitation for an interview. We knew that this was very special, as for example, Al Gore didn't get one for his film An Inconvenient Truth.
And well, as we realized that this interview was an enormous gift, we also found out it's kind of a responsibility. And with our documentary, we wanted to make the story more accessible and also bring it back to the United States.
Yeah, thank you for sharing the thoughts and also these visual impressions of the film on there. And I just have a spontaneous question. You said you want to also bring it back to the American people. How was your documentary film kind of distributed and received over there? Do you know how many people in the United States have watched the movie, or was it available there in the internet or in museums or on television?
Well, actually, it premiered at the film festival in Washington, so that there was quite an audience. And then also we have it on sale in the United States, but in the States it never was shown on the TV. We never could sell it somehow. It's a very difficult thing, and also the agent we had just wasn't able. It was shown in Japan, in television,
okay.
but not in the United States.
Okay, interesting fact. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I would now like to move on to our other panelists. So Jean-Louis Scartezzini, as I mentioned, he has a very different background. So studied physical engineering and physics on there, and then he spent quite a while in the United States. So he was did part of his PhD in Colorado State, and then he also spent time in the United States. And I think we can say, so you are kind of one of the founders or starters of these kind of solar-powered buildings and energy things in buildings around EPFL on there. And as I mentioned, you are a solar freak since a long time. And can you tell us a bit about your motivation? What kind of brought you to this topic? Because as a physicist, you could have worked on many other topics. Why this topic?
Yep, hello. Thank you very much, Burkhard, for this introduction. Actually, as you said, I am a solar freak since 40 years, and I was in fact educated and trained in plasma physics, dealing with fusion reactors and also nuclear engineering at the beginning of my very early career. But in fact, I can say in a way to say today, I stood in the field of fusion reactors, but I choose a reactor, which is the sun, which is a fusion reactor, which is 150 million kilometers away from the Earth. So that means very stable since even more than 5 billion years, and will stay very stable. So it's one of the reasons to be interested by solar was that. It's a very abundant and stable source of energy. And we know that each hour we get on the Earth, we get the amount of energy that the planet, humanity is using each hour. We receive from the sun the amount of energy that the humanity is using each year. So that means it's a very large amount of energy that we get from there. And I had the chance, as you said, to discover the United States and also the Solar Energy Application Lab in Colorado at the Colorado State University, close to Fort Collins in 1984. And there, George Loew, who founded this lab in 1972 already, and was one of the PhD advisor for my thesis. So I discovered, and maybe Lydia can show the slide, I discovered that one of the first solar village, actually, that this team in Colorado set up. And again, it was very interesting to see to learn and also to meet these pioneers, because again, through their activities and also through the activity of the Los Alamos Scientific Lab, which is the second slide I would like to ask to Lydia to show, there have been a lot of a great momentum, not only in the US, not only in Colorado and in New Mexico. As you can see, this is a passive solar house that coming from the discovering, the research, the computer simulation, and the other analysis that either the Colorado State University did or the Los Alamos Scientific Lab did, but it provided a momentum on the planet. And actually, in our country, in Switzerland, coming back from Colorado State University, I've seen how much the ideas of this pioneer from CSU, from University of Wisconsin, from the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, also has brought to Europe and to Switzerland, because we had here the first research, development, and demonstration in the field. And this has lasted for, as I said, for 40 years. So I had the chance also to see in Europe also the development, the tremendous, the very spectacular development of solar energy in all this form, from passive solar building to photovoltaic, even solar thermal, and as we have seen on the White House in 1979. So there have been a tremendous development of solar energy from almost nil in those time to, for example, millions of users of energy efficient mini building, and again through the generation of solar PV solar worldwide, which is now reaching 1,000 gigawatts. So it has been a tremendous development, and I had the chance to see this development, not only in Switzerland, gaining it from the US and seeing it in Europe also. That was great. That was great.
Yeah, thank you for sharing these the two pictures. Interesting to look back in the past, and this is now 50 years ago. What happened already at that time? No? At that point, I would also like to remind our participants, if you have any questions, thoughts, use please the chat to write in there. So we'll come back to this and discuss all your thoughts in 15 to 20 minutes here on there. Jean-Louis, when you watched the movie on there, so what are your thoughts on what is in this documentary on there? So what scene kind of moved you most, or what is your learning from this?
It was very interesting because again, we have seen how much Jimmy Carter and his team has been a real pioneer of solar and renewable energies, and very unlucky at the end, as was mentioned before. But again, this reminds me the time in 1984 at CSU, because already in those time, the different lab were facing very difficult time, because the other administration from Donald Reagan took a fully different direction. And some of the lab, for example, the Solar Energy Research Institute, which was created in Colorado by the Carter administration, but when Donald Reagan came, was reduced by almost half. That means 50%, half of the collaborators were fired. So the time have been very tough already in '84, but still many of these lab, I mentioned Solar Energy Application Lab, but also Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, for example, in San Francisco, they have continued their activities. And we know that the funding in the US are extremely dynamic and competitive, but it always follow a very bumpy road with up and down. And you have to, depending from the politics, from the ideology, from the leaders, and you have to live with this very bumpy situation. But despite of these, we have today the kind of heritage of this first pioneer that was Jimmy Carter and his team, because solar is there, renewable energy is there. And for example, only in the US, 25% of the electricity is generated by the renewables today. So all over these first pioneer actions, and I probably should say that there is a French saying who say it's always wrong to be right too soon. And maybe Jimmy Carter was right too soon, and he has been unlucky for this reason. But the heritage is there. The heritage is there, no doubt.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. We come back to this point in a minute, but I would like to go back once more to the documentary film on there, and I would like to ask you, Christina and Roman, because you explained us your motivation and how it worked and so on. But when you have a project like this, there are also quite emotional moments. So what was for you the most kind of emotional moment that when you think back on making the film and all of this, was it the interview? Was it because when I watched the movie, I was thinking that some of the moments were probably quite emotional. So any thoughts on that?
Yes, of course. I mean, I think it was very emotional during the whole period that we encountered so many open doors. We had just the people let us in were so happy to be able to talk about this unfortunate situation 30 years ago, that somebody has interests in this period.
And it was during Bush time, It was also a lot of hatred and a lot of frustration in those under those people who were involved in that first solar wave.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, I mean, probably you have no second chance to interview a former president.
Right.
And it was funny because we were there and set up everything, and then we had to wait. There was always a security person next to us, and then somehow we forgot a little bit of time, and President Carter was a bit early, and then he was in the door and said, "Isn't that exciting that we're going to do that?" And we said, "Yes, it's very exciting." So that was really a special moment.
Perfect. No, very nice. That's really good. Right. I would like to go back to one other aspect of the whole point. And Jean-Louis, you're of course you're a physicist, so natural science on there. And we discussed at another occasion, of course, from the basis of natural science, it is very, very clear that we have to go for renewable energy. And so this is a very clear answer from all the kind of basis of natural science, that this is the only way we can do this, and anything else may not work out at the end. How can we kind of bring this a bit better into the broader public, and particular also in the decision-making process? There's a documentary film like the one from Christina and Roman. Is this a first step, or what else actions do we have to do? Any thoughts on that?
It's definitely a first step. I think we have to use all the possible means to communicate. What I mean, for example, report from the academies of science, the Swiss one, the European level, the US and others. These kind of reports that we produce as scientists for politics, but also for the citizens are very important. This is one way to communicate, because I'm convinced that the politics and the energy transition and the decision in this field should be knowledge-based. And knowledge-based mean, you're right, knowing also the principle of thermodynamics that are very difficult to teach some time. But one principle we have learned is that the energy is conserved. So there is no way you can invent energy ex nihilo. You have to transform energy from one source to another. And this was a law or a principle that we learned from the oil crisis, for example, or we learn again from the Ukraine crisis. And this is one principle that I think the population, the citizen have understood, the politics also. We probably have understood that there is a limit to growth on a finite Earth planet. Mm-hmm. And this was already said 50 years ago by the Club of Rome and the Meadows report. But I think these have been understood finally, and hopefully we will take the right decision. But there is one aspect that is not understood, which is the second principle of thermodynamics. That means when you have a finite system like the Earth, what we call the entropy, which is a disorder, will grow unless you export this disorder to the space, to the outdoor, to the exterior part of the Earth, and you use sources of energy to reduce this disorder. And one example is the living being that we are. We do that every day by feeding ourselves with water and food in order to avoid the disorder, the entropy to grow too much in our body, because if the entropy grows, we die, because the equilibrium is the death. And so it's the same principle deals also for the Earth, for the planet. Again, this is something we try to explain to politics. Whatever the ideology is, the nature and the law of nature are there, and you cannot fool nature. This was said already by Richard Feynman many years ago.
True, right, yeah. So the lesson to learn for us, whatever teaching natural sciences, so we need to explain it to a broader public, and the key important things must reach everyone. No? So I think that is an important message to kind of bring it really to a broader public. What I found interesting is that the activities that in part are discussed in the film, or they are led to a reduction of the daily oil import at that time in the US from whatever 8 billion barrels to half, by 50% reduction on there. And I looked up the numbers for today, so they are back again on there. So all the reductions were very quickly back again, and even higher than this one on there, although renewable energy changed on there. So although it was not so successful at the end, it had an impact at that time. No? I think that was maybe in this context of how can we kind of bring across important knowledge on there. And Christina and Roman, you as artists, you work together with scientists. I saw you have other projects, whatever, Color of Sky and so on there. What is your perspective from that side? When you work with scientists as an artist on there, what advice can you give to the scientists on there to kind of be better in the broader kind of dissemination of the things that needs to be kind of brought to the public?
I think I would say scientists are very good teachers, and they reach they reach an audience. The question is how we make people listening to the messages and react.
Right. Yeah.
I think the facts are there.
Mm-hmm. And the reason I think we like to work together with scientists, it was from the beginning. Actually, is that we're just interested in all these questions. So it's in our case, it's our interest in science and the collaborations, and I think it's, you know, in arts and culture, we have a time behind us, we say, that was more interested in this postmodern discussion of everything. Only things that exist in your brain exist, and we're a bit skeptic about it, and think that there's a time coming where we have to talk about numbers and CO2 in the atmosphere, and really some basic science facts. Mm-hmm. So that's a little bit the background.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe it's as Jean-Louis mentioned. We have to use all possible means maybe not only means, but all departments and also professions.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, communication, in my opinion, is very important. No, so communication to kind of move things, and of course there are different people to communicate with. No, so there is the one area, let's say politics, decision making, and so on, and then it's the broader public, and then there is even the future. So the current younger generation, you can call them maybe the post-petrol or the solar generation on there. So we probably need different kind of communication channels in these directions on there. No? But coming back to the topic on there of the documentary on there. So when we see here Jimmy Carter as an early kind of spearhead on there, he tried this, and I really liked in your film also his kind of address to the nation, where he asked the people, you have to be part of it, no? And he tried to be really persuasive, no? So you have to be part of it. You have to change your lifestyle or the way you do things. This probably was not very kind of beneficial for his political career at the end on there. So, Jean-Louis, what can we learn from this? So if politicians tell you have to change, and people will not hear it. So what can we learn from this to avoid failure next time?
I think, first of all, Jimmy Carter and his team, they have been very brave. What I mean, for a long time, I've been just an example of my career. I've been president of the Swiss Solar Energy Society for 8 years. In those times, it was the largest society, can you believe it? Solar Energy Society in the world. We had more than 6,000 members, larger than the US in those times. It was in the 80s. But again, in those times already, we always, and approaching citizen, approaching politician, approaching decision and stakeholders, the conclusion for us was we need courageous and brave leaders, either politics or leader of companies or leader of whatever they are, opinion leaders. We need them to be brave and courageous. And that was definitely a must for solar. And I think all of this time, starting from Carter to today, we have seen some of them, and taking brave and courageous decision, because some of these decisions are not very popular, as you said. Some other can be. We have to change the mentality. It's a new paradigm that we have to learn. But again, there have been this type of fight, if we call them fight. There have been, for example, Pasteur, the theory of bacteria and other, he has to fight to convince people that was the reason why people get sick. And then from Pasteur, we gain the way we build building and we take care to avoid bacteria and others. So it has always been the case when new knowledge and a new way of thinking and behaving had to be not imposed, but we had to convince people to follow this way. So again, I think I've also found by reading the history of Carter, saying from Karl Marx, maybe I would have some difficulty to bring this argument in the US, who knows? But Karl Marx said history doesn't repeat itself, but it sometimes begs. And actually, Carter was typically, we don't repeat what Carter had done, but there was a kind of begging in those times. And this is something we've seen for different reasons in the history of humanity. Right. But again, now the time is definitely to move up. And right. The big challenge is to move. And because there is no time, time is running out regarding climate change, and we can no longer afford to procrastinate. We have to move. That's a real challenge today.
Yeah, fully agree. No, I have some hope that economics at some parts may help us, because when technology moves on, sometimes it's even the cheaper alternative to use a renewable, and that of course money always helps, no? If you do this. So to all the three of you would be a question when you look at the situation right now. So what are the biggest challenges regarding kind of solar energy from, let's say, the perspective of the artists that do communication, that do kind of discussions on there? What do you see as the biggest challenges on there that we move on? And then to Jean-Louis, what is the more, maybe there's a technical aspect, or what you see as the challenges on there? So any thoughts on that? Whoever would like to answer first, right?
I think we are convinced that the huge challenge is the society or the metamorphosis, as we call it, because we think it's not only a little change, it's really a huge change, which is probably similar to something which will be completely different in future. So it's not.
But if you give this message to the public, so humans are typically afraid of change.
Yes,
they are. Even if it's a change to the better, and in our case here, it's an unavoidable change due to thermodynamics, as we have heard on there. But still, change is difficult. So how do we kind of communicate that this is a good change? That's I think the challenge. Now, what we have to do, huh?
Well, of course, it would be good to have good examples, like maybe
brave leaders, as said,
or like countries doing it, and you see it's a success. At least you're not so dependent on foreign oil,
Okay.
But on the other side, I actually the two of us are a bit skeptic. We think this is going to be a kind of new class war between the people who want to change and the others who don't want to change. I don't think, or we don't think, this is going to be an easy walk, right. And it needs a lot of. And I think we're entering in this phase now that some parties are really seeing themselves as the anti-green and the anti-renewable parties. This is only starting at the moment, we guess. So I think it's not only about convincing and giving good example, which is always very good, but it's also going on the street.
Right, true. Yeah, so I see we get some questions here in our chat. Before we go to the questions, I would give Jean-Louis just the chance. What is from the more technological side, so from the physics and solar freak side, the biggest challenge in regarding solar energy, more solar energy, and the transformation we just described?
Again, I fully agree with what was said. I think the solution are there. They are here today. They are here since a couple of years already. But any transformation in a society, and especially in the energy sector, need at least 30 years. So we started 30 years ago, and now we finally go in the right direction. Something I would like to say: it's like when you drive a car which is getting older and older, you don't feel the drawbacks and the disadvantage of having a very old car. And I just looked to the scenario we did in the US in '84, and I found an article that I wrote here in September '84. Actually, just taking the developed country, industrialized country, US and other, we follow the most optimistic scenario, the low demand scenario, that in those times were not the one we were expecting to be the most probable. And that's the case if you look to how the energy demand for US, for Switzerland and other countries have developed. So again, there is a change, there is a movement that we don't perceive. On the other side, technical solutions are there, but convincing people to use them is something which is going on, actually. Thinking about solar, in the time of Jimmy Carter, thermal system were the most economic and the most cost effective. Today, they have difficulty against the PV solar, which is so cheap today that you can buy it for nothing today. So again, we have to convince all the people, most of the people, and especially worldwide, not only rich people that we are, but also the people with more difficulty from the economic side. And this is probably again the challenge with the speed of the development. But I'm rather optimistic, and that's depending from people to people. But we are the right way. But
we should all be optimistic. That's very important. But I think we should take one very important kind of message here from your statement on there. You, as a physicist with a technical background, see the biggest challenge not in the kind of in the technique or in the physics of these things, but in the people. And I think that's a very important thing to kind of note over here. Now I would like to invite here Stephanie, my co-host, to just join us, and let's have a look in the questions that are in the chat on there, right?
Yeah, there are already some interesting questions. I'm gonna go for one. It's about Rowan Keller, which we saw in the presentation in the bath tube. And Stefan Meda asked also, is this fake news? Was this from AI or is it true? What's the story there?
So the question is, were you really in this bath tube?
It's all true, no fake news. It was just the day before we handed over the panels to the Carter library. We thought we have to find out if they still work, and then we went to Walmart and buy this top and connected it everything, and I took this bath. I have to maybe you've seen the shampoo doesn't work because I chose the conditioner, from the hotel. So this was a bit of a disappointment, but the water was warm.
Mm-hmm.
And then we took back everything because
handed over the panel, and then the security said, it was very funny, we watched everything through the video cameras.
Very good. So no fake news, all true story. Perfect. Very good. Right. What other questions we have?
So there's there's the question. Now it's a more bigger question, general question: how to depoliticize solar energy or renewable energy so that it becomes less dependent on changing political agendas.
So Louis, what do you think about this?
Again, I remember a song from Sting who said, we share the same biology, whatever the ideology is. I would say we share the same law of nature, whatever the ideology is. And the law of nature, again, sorry to come back to thermodynamics, first principle, second principle tell us that we cannot rely on internal sources of energy, whatever they are, gas or coal or nuclear, in the system, which is the system Earth. We have to use external source of energy. There is only one very close to us, which is the solar energy. This doesn't have to do with any ideology of the word, but only physics, second principle of thermodynamics. But this is gently understood, I think, in different countries, because from the left to the right, to say it, we see people moving in the direction of solar energy. So that's one way, I think, but it's a very important way to depolitize, to take away solar energy from politics and ideology.
Thank you. Stephanie, one more question?
One more question, we have time. Okay, so then there is a question to the filmmakers. What motivated you as artists to make this film? What did you want to convey through it?
I think we tried a little bit to frame the motivation. It's as we said, we were writing a post-petrolistic manifesto, and during this research we found out that there was a solar installation on the White House, and B, that these solar thermal panels are still around. And I think as artists we have a special relationship through objects. And we are also convinced that these objects can, or they have a story inside them, and if you travel around with them, you reach people on a different level not only about knowing, maybe as well as emotionally. And I think that during the deeper we digged into this story, the more we got involved and the more supported we've also been.
I would like to close the session today. I thank all participants for their active involvement. I thank, of course, Christian and Roman and Jean-Louis for the discussion over here. And of course, I thank the team behind the scenes who made this all possible and guided us throughout. I would like to invite all of you who joined today and all of your friends, your neighbors and people you know to join us next time. Please come back to the next webinars or other activities of the Daylight Academy. And thank you for tuning in today. Thank you and have a nice evening. Thank you for watching.